Welcome to The Rest is Giant Robots, a conversation through the careers of writer Simon Furman and artist Andrew Wildman. Recollections and revelations about the highs and the lows as creatives in comics, books, games, film and TV. Hello and welcome to episode 33 of The Rest is Giant Robots. I'm Andrew Wildman.
And I'm Simon Furman. And again, if you don't know what we do, you're on the wrong podcast.
Yeah, just don't bother.
Hopefully we're here. We have some people who saw us at NorCon now tuning in, because I did do a fairly aggressive bit of marketing at NorCon.
You did. I've never seen that before. I've never seen you actually be like a, street touter kind of thing.
I have done it. I mean, when we launched To the Death, which is one of the things we'll talk a little bit about in the upcoming sort of space. But when we launched To the Death, we went to MCM to do the big launch push, and this was for the print version. And it was like we were sort of slightly set back from the passage where people were walking. It was kind of like the tables went into an indent where creators were sat, and lots of people were just wandering past, gaze fixed on some point ahead of them and not looking. But we'd had somebody had very wisely told me that people love bookmarks. Maybe they, everybody still read books? I don't know, but everybody likes a bookmark.
So they have other uses, I'm sure.
So we had some To the Death bookmarks done, more or less just to give away at the table. But I just took a big stack of those, went and stood out in the main thoroughfare and handed them to people and said, "Oh, would you like to hear about this? It's our new project." Getting them to turn around and look at the stand. Would you like to come and meet myself, Jeff Senior, get something signed? And it really reaped rewards, in terms of the footfall after that point. But it took me getting up off my ass and walking out and more or less sort of, because people, I've noticed this at conventions, sometimes walk around, there's so much to look at, it's sort of overload, and they're not really kind of taking in everything around them. So at NorCon, I just grabbed a bunch of our Rest is Giant Robots flyers and went and more or less rugby tackled people as they went past, and and sort of thrust a leaflet in their hands and said, "Can I interest you in our podcast? And look, we're right here if you want to, come and see what we do." And it was sort of the only way on the Sunday of NorCon, which was quiet. It felt quiet.
I thought NorCon was a very interesting convention. I mean, I think we both did it years ago, probably different organizers. I don't know. But I thought it was
the same organizer.
Well, probably same. Well, I mean, if it's the same organizer, then they've done. I think they've done really well. I mean, I loved the setup of the convention. I mean, it didn't do very well for me, but you never know. Sometimes you do really well, sometimes you don't. Depends on all sorts of different factors. Usually, how relevant you are. I felt a massive irrelevance while I was there, but I have to give them a good shout out because they put together a really good event. I mean, there was it was at the Norwich Showground, whatever it's called.
Yeah, Norfolk Showground.
Norfolk Showground, yeah. So they've got the venue, which is like a massive shed, basically, but perfect inside space for doing all of that. But outside, I thought it was fantastic. It was like a festival. There were all these kind of food vans and tents where you can get stuff and get your photo taken with a droid and all that kind of stuff. There was music playing, there's people dancing around, sitting on the grass, having a great time. I mean, they weren't inside buying stuff from us, which is the downside.
I mean, it's always that thing with conventions and the weather. You slightly don't want it to be too off-putting in terms of rain, snow, etc. But if it's a really nice day, less people want to come inside to a convention, I guess.
Yeah, but for punters, I thought it was a really good one. So big shout out to NorCon. I think they put on a really good event.
Yeah. And I've
Yeah.
just got back from a small event I think you've been to called Invasion Taunton, which is
Is that the
organised
one
by
in the library? The what?
that's the one in the library, yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's organised by a guy called Mike Allwood, who goes back to the original Bristol Comic Cons. And
Yes.
I'm always kind of happy to support Mike's thing. It's for charity, it's free to enter. You know,
Mm.
it's just a generally nice, family themed event. And that
Yeah.
that was really nice. It wasn't as busy and buzzy as the previous one I'd been to there, but just really nice, very relaxed, laid back. And it's, from 10 o'clock till 3 o'clock on a Saturday. So it's a very
Yeah.
sort of focused time, which is good.
Yeah. Yeah, I did. I did one a couple of years ago or last year or whenever, I can't remember. But for Mike, because yeah, we've known Mike for many years, and he invited me to go along. I thought it was really just nice,
Yes,
very chilled in the library, and I mean it's a good library there.
it is, isn't it?
So why haven't we got a library like this?
Yeah.
It's fantastic. Got a nice little cafe and loads of space. It was brilliant.
And it's funny,
Um,
though Mike promotes it and everything, lots of people came in and said, well, I didn't know this was happening today. Oh, I didn't know you were going to be here today. So I just thought, okay, fine. It's great with the library because you do get people just walking past going, what's all that then? So
yeah,
yeah, it was good.
yeah. I was, and there was some. I thought there were some really good creators there as well. There were two or three people that I'd never heard of, and their
Mm.
work was really
Mm.
good,
Yeah.
really good.
Yeah. No, there were,
So
I mean, there was some, there's a 2000 AD guy called Keck W who was there, and Shaky Came was there. So it was a nice
okay,
mixture of art styles, and then some of the more, I suppose, independent, kind of recent creators, publishers. Yeah, it was
yeah,
good. Yeah, nice little, sort of buzzy room, and yeah, like I say, the footfall wasn't as good as the previous time I'd been, but I don't, you can't tell what it's going to be like. As you say, with conventions, you just go,
yeah,
some are great, others are just sort of pleasant, and you know, if you don't have to travel too far, it's not a big
yeah,
deal.
yeah. No, it's all good. Yeah, well done, Mike. What a
Yes.
legend.
Yep. So this time, as we were telling the Patreon viewers earlier, we're going to be talking about our respective careers post Regeneration One. So, the Transformers series we've been working on for 20 something issues had finished. And for the first time, I wasn't on a regular Transformers book. It seemed like I'd been doing well since IDW started in 2005, and before that Dreamwave, it had been
Mm,
pretty solid one way or another Transformers work, even after, Devastation and Revelation finished. I was then doing the movie stuff for them and then Regeneration One. So, it felt like, wow, for the first time, I haven't got a Transformers comic to work on, which was kind of weird.
yeah, yeah. Who writes those things when you don't? I don't. I mean,
Well,
there's no.
yeah. Well,
You
I
don't have
mean,
to answer that. I'm
well,
just.
no, no. I mean, by this point, the sort of, the IDW universe, if you like, their G1 universe, was in the very capable hands of James Roberts and John
Of
Barber.
course.
And,
Yeah.
they were motoring with it. So, I mean, it was all fine. It felt like, well, okay, that's their sort of playground now. So, like I say, for the first time, I was thinking, what else can I do that isn't jumping back into that universe? Even if there'd been an invitation, it would have felt kind of strange because
Mm,
it was very much their storyline by then, even though they'd taken a lot of the things I'd created back in Infiltration and the Spotlights and
mm,
develop those into newer, bigger concepts. But
yeah.
yeah, so for the
Yeah.
first time, I didn't have a regular monthly or a Transformers comic to work on, which was, like I say, one of those times we were talking again to the Patreon viewers just about those times when you're very busy and you get to the end of something if you haven't sort of thought ahead, if you haven't planned ahead for the end of that, you can suddenly
Mm.
find yourself a bit bereft of work.
Yeah. Yeah, very much so.
And of
And then
course,
you
the
have to do the hard work to find it. Yeah.
yeah, and of course the comic itself is still coming out. It looks like you're still producing monthly, but because you're working months ahead, it's finished for you a while back, ahead of
Mm.
the last issue coming out.
Mm. Mm.
And it is a strange time, and it was a strange time where I suddenly looked around and thought, do I need to start knocking on doors?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. And I guess you did.
Yeah, I guess I did. And, I again, as we were saying, I was very lucky still to be very gainfully employed on Mad Hatter Chronicles, the
Mm.
animated CITV show that Platinum Films made. I see, in fact, when I sort of look back at my blog for this time, season 3 was just launching on CITV.
Mm.
This, by the way, is sort of 2014 into 2015.
That's
Yes.
right.
So season 3 was launching, which probably meant we were working on season 4 by then.
Yes. I
And
guess so, yeah. I can't remember which seasons I worked on, but
mm,
um
poss
I mean, it's a good one to come up, Matt Hatter Chronicles, for a couple of reasons. One, because, well, probably three reasons. I don't know. It might even be four, but I'll get to that. I mean, reason one, because it's work, and you need gainful employment. Another reason that Matt Hatter Chronicles was amazing was because it was a show that had so much content in it, and it was so kind of well imagined, and had a lot of time and money spent on it to all the kind of initial development of it to create a kind of world for writers and artists to play in. So that was a lot of fun. It was made in studios at Pinewood, so that was amazing to work at Pinewood. Um, and it was just a kind of another discipline working in. I mean, we'd both worked in some animation or whatever, but this was like a full-on CG show that we were kind of right in the heart of, not just
mm,
working remotely and providing our own little bit of content for, but actually just right in the engine,
mm.
the
Yeah, I
engine
mean,
room.
we were very much both of us in the production office of that.
Yeah.
I had this slightly dual role of script supervisor, so I would, you know, advise other writers and get scripts conform to the show from other writers, and I was writing a large amount of content for the show myself,
Yeah.
and by season 4 we had another writer called Richard Dungworth, and we were basically just the two writers on the show, which was really nice because you could keep a level of quality and consistency in the
Mm.
scripts. But yeah, it did mean I'd in 2013 I'd moved down to Broadstairs in Kent,
Mm.
which made the commute to Pinewood a little bit more grueling than it had been. I mean, I wasn't in the office a lot, but naturally there were times when we would have big script meetings or other, production things that I had to be at. So yeah,
Mm.
it became a bit more of a tortuous commute to get there all the way
Mm.
up to the M25, round the M25, out on the M40 or or the A40, whichever. But yes, it was a
Mm.
little more of a grind to get there.
Did you ever do a stay over? I mean, I used to go down
Yes.
and stay overnight. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Nigel Stone, who ran Platinum Films, who runs Platinum Films, was very good at, if he was bringing us all in from afar, he would, put us up in a hotel and we'd make a 2-day thing of it.
Yeah. I think he only put me up in a hotel once. It's very
Mm.
kind of him, but I used to just find somewhere where there was the nut. Did you ever stay in the convent?
No, I remember you telling me about this. Yeah, no, yes, very
That's
strange.
very, it was,
Were,
it
were,
was very
were there
strange.
nuns running around?
Yeah. Yeah.
Very strange, but B&B still,
It
is
was,
it?
yeah, it really was. You just had to embrace the totally surreal nature of the whole thing. I mean, when they first started, when we first started putting Mad Hatter together, and I was in there early doors, and there were storyboard artists. I think there were three storyboard artists in there, but at least two of them, I think, were just working on paper. They weren't working on screen, with Cintiq tablets and all that kind of stuff. Um, they were working on paper, proper old school drawing with pencil on paper, cutting it out, sticking it onto sheets, cutting out the lettering from the script, sticking that on the sheets. I mean, does anyone do that anymore? I don't know. But there was one guy, and I can't remember his name, which is a shame, but he was the first one that stayed in the convent. I don't know whether he found it himself or whether somebody recommended to him, but it was just round the back of Pinewood Studios. Lovely old building, with these lovely ladies sort of running this thing. But we just thought it was hilarious when we were like, did you have a
Yeah.
nice time in the convent and all this kind of thing?
Yes.
And then and then it just became such a joke that whenever he asked a question in the studio, if he'd say something like, has anybody got any paper? We'd always just say none.
Yeah. Yes.
The
He's
answer
a-
to all of his questions was none.
yeah.
That's in NUN, obviously.
Yeah, yes,
Um,
yes.
but so eventually I just thought, I've got to go and stay in this place to see what it's like. It sounds like he's making it all up. And it was very sparse, but it was comfortable and it was a really nice breakfast. And the nuns, they were just really lovely and
Mm.
polite and just kind of looked after you. And it was great, really sweet. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I
There
mean,
wasn't much to do there.
no. But when I think about Mad Hatter, it spanned a big period of that time.
Yeah.
Probably it must have been 5 years I was working on it,
Mm.
on and off, not, completely full time, but, you know, the series from my first involvement to, you know, when Matt Hatter ended, and then we started talking about young Bear Grylls adventures or whatever it was called.
Yeah.
That period must have spanned 5 years or more. So it was a very good bedrock, sort of bit of work. And yes, it
Yeah.
definitely helped at this time because as we were saying earlier, it was like otherwise it was time to go and knock on some doors.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I was during Mad Hatter Chronicles. I mean, initially on Mad Hatter Chronicles. I mean, we've said this before, so I won't sort of dwell on it. But I got into Mad Hatter Chronicles because of David Friedman, who I'd worked with previously on a couple of shows.
Mm.
Zorro and was the Legend of the
Of the
Dragon and all
Yeah.
that kind of thing. So that was great. Um, but that was really when I was getting full on into TV, especially by the second time that I went back on Mad Hatter, because initially I was production designer on seasons one and two, I think. I don't know that I had much to do with season three, but then I can't remember. But I went back in and did some storyboarding. But in between those two stints at Platinum, my TV work had really started to pick up. So directly after my first stint on Mad Hatter was when I went to work on Rough Rough Tweet and Dave, which is a,
Yeah.
a kids animated TV show. Um, but it wasn't long after that then I was starting to get live action work.
Mm.
And just to remind myself as to how much my career has changed, sort of post comics. I look back on IMDb because I always try to get my credits up
Mm.
on IMDb. So I had a look
Yeah.
at my own my own listing. I can't believe the amount of stuff there is on here that apart from some credits that I had on stuff which I was kind of involved in, but I didn't put them on there. I don't think somebody else put them on there.
Mm.
So then there was Legend of the Dragon for BKN. That was
Yeah.
2005, 2006. Dork Hunters from Outer Space, 2008. And then The Fades was the first thing I did, 2011. That was a BBC horror show.
Yeah.
And then picking up stuff on Doctor Who, 2012, 2013. So this is around about the time of my first stint on
Yeah.
Matt Hatter. I did a film called Blood Moon, which was a cowboys versus werewolves low budget movie.
Okay.
It's just,
Yeah.
which is fun. So anybody look that up, Blood Moon. That it's kind of fun. It's quite nicely done actually.
Mm.
Um, Our Zoo, which was a I don't know which channel that was. Channel 4, I think.
Hmm.
That was nice. I did a movie in 2015 called Pressure, which is about some people trapped in a submersible,
Mm.
and how they get out, and that was quite fun. Good casting in that. A very young Matthew Good, who had been
Hmm.
in some stuff, but now like big. I mean, he's in
Yeah.
Department Q.
Yeah.
He's great. Um, Rough Tweet and Dave, The Interceptor. I think that was a BBC show. I don't think it was ITV.
Mm.
Just full on crime drama. So I'm kind of settling into a bit of a groove then with the kind of shows that I'm working on. Um, and then sort of Mad Hatter Chronicles again. Jericho. That was a nice. It was kind of it was set around the time of the building of the Ribble Head. Is it called Viaduct up north? I
Okay.
don't know if
Yeah.
it's the one they use on Harry Potter about that huge viaduct, but
Mm.
it was about the building of that.
Mm.
Did a movie with Naomi Watts called Shut In. Just loads of stuff. I can't
Yeah.
believe Pole
Wow.
Dark.
Gosh. Yeah. Yeah. I hadn't realized myself how many things you were involved in at the time, and
Yeah,
you're still here. We are still doing TV work, aren't we? It's very much
yeah.
become your main staple, hasn't it?
Yeah, and I got really lucky. I mean, I hunt work down a bit now when I need to. Like, we were saying earlier to the Prime members about how in our downtime how we get work, and basically it's like in any industry, you just kind of tap up all the contacts that you've got. But over all of that stuff, I've built up quite a few contacts because you work with pretty much at that point I was working with different directors on pretty much every show, and then since then I've got I've worked on shows with probably three or four of those directors come up again and again because I have the privilege of being their go-to storyboard artist,
Yeah.
and they say, oh yeah, well, we wouldn't use anyone else, so
Yeah. No, no, it's really good. And we all, the other thing we were saying is we do have these sort of almost safe spaces where the people know us very well. And,
mm,
you can generally just in a very social way just talk to people and say, look, if there's anything coming up, I've got some space, it'd be great to work on things. And that for me, that's Titan Books or Titan Comics as the division is now. And,
mm,
when the Regeneration One was coming to an end, and I was thinking, yeah, I don't really have any comics work lined up. It was to Titan that I, sort of went out for probably a drink with people and said, look, is there anything coming up? And
yeah.
from that, I got work on, they were doing a Torchwood magazine
Oh right, yeah.
with some original comic strip in, like the Doctor Who comic, like the Doctor Who Monthly. There was a bit of original comic strip in there. So I did some Torchwood, which was great fun. Um, a few one-shotty ones, and then part of a bigger story called Rift War. So that was really nice. And then on top of that, um, one of the editors I know there, Martin Eden, said, "Well, look, we've got the license for Dragons, which was a animated TV spin-off from How to Train Your Dragon. It was called
Hmm.
Dragons Riders of Berk, and they'd got the comic graphic novel right to that, not How to Train Your Dragon, but it had to be branded Riders of Berk. But they
Yeah.
had a series of 6 mini graphic novels planned, and they basically said, would you like to be the writer on those? And I thought, great, that's a nice chunk of writing work. And not just that, I love the original movie, big
Mm.
time. I mean, and the sequels, but the original movie to me is still the kind of magical one of them.
So you're already familiar with the product. So I mean, there are times where you really have to do your homework. Somebody
Yeah,
approaches you and it's like, oh God, I haven't read that or I haven't seen that, and you really have to
yeah.
steep yourself in it. But
The
that's an
vi-
advantage when you're already a fan of the work.
Yeah, yeah. And, so that was an easy fit for me and, just really enjoyable to sort of, it's funny, much as I absolutely love Transformers and I'm always happy to be in Transformers, it's also just great to be able to step into some other completely different license or storyline with different kinds of characters. And, writing about, dragon riding Vikings on a little island was just, it's such fun. They're such good characters. And yeah, so I started just coming up with ideas for that series, and they were
Mm,
meaty. They were something like, I think something like 40 pages or something each one, 40 or so. So you could tell a
yeah,
decent sized story. And, sometimes there would be a lead story and a short backup. So, it was just great fun. And it really did fill that slight void of comics work. I always like to have some comics work going, whatever I'm doing.
yeah. And who are some of the artists that you worked
Well,
with
I
on
mean,
that? Anyone we know?
yeah, Jack Lawrence did a bunch of it.
Oh
So,
well, yeah.
I'd already worked with Jack on oh gosh, which one was it? Atom, Alpha Teens on
Hmm.
Machines. So I'd kind of
Yeah.
worked with him already, really liked his stuff. And I think this was before I knew Jack was a Transformers fan slash artist already. I mean, he was one of those like James and Nick who'd done a lot of, you know, fan work on Transformers. So, I
Yeah.
didn't really realize at this point that I would soon see Jack again in the context of Transformers as opposed to these other things. But
Yeah.
yeah, it was
Yeah.
really nice, to get to work with him. And there were other artists whose names sadly have escaped me at the moment, but but really good artists, very, very, good at capturing the style and the likenesses and everything. And I'm sure they all had to be vetted by DreamWorks, I think, who owned
Mm.
Dragons and How to
Yeah, I
Train
think
Your
so.
Dragon. So yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
so that was nice, and my bit of Torchwood sort of was enough with a few little bits and pieces of other things. I was working on a series, Eagle Moss, a
Oh yeah.
Partworks company. Um,
Mm.
a guy I used to work with at Marvel UK, John Tomlinson, was the, commissioning editor there on a series called Marvel Fact Files, which was exactly what it says on the tin. It was, page details of characters and Marvel, worlds and nations and everything else. And he'd got me doing a bunch of stuff for that, and just, s- random things really, except every time there was, if we needed Death's Head, we did a great Death's Head cutaway that Kev Hopgood drew. So, I would come
Mm.
in and write all the surrounding text for that. And that was really fun
Mm.
because I love Marvel, of course, and
Mm.
that was very nice to work on too.
Mm. Yeah. Shout out to John Tomlinson. Got me my first ever work at Marvel UK.
Yeah,
Hi,
yeah.
John. I hope
But
you're listening. If you're not, why not?
and this feeds back into what we were saying before, that when you do hit, you know, those kind of uh, pause bits in the workflow, it's really useful to have this network of friends, contacts at
Mm.
the companies you've been involved in the past, or they've moved on to a different company and they reach out to you. So yeah, the comics biz is fairly small in terms
Mm.
of everybody seems to know everybody else. So you can, in a very social way, pick up work sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's very often people's only way in trying to break into the industry. It's just like just get to know the people because they're at conventions and all that kind of stuff. So go and be nice to
Yeah.
professionals if you're trying to break into the industry. It's the best way. Because like you say, it's very small, a relatively small industry, and certainly within the UK, everyone knows everyone else. So
Hmm.
that's the way
And
to
it's
do it.
and it's good. You build up a rep with a company, you will be offered more staff. I mean, Titan, it's been fairly, it's not exactly regular, but I go from Dragons to eventually I'm on Robotech for them, and then Battletoads, and currently Kong Skull Island. So,
Yeah.
there's a nice sort of sense of they're always there, which is really nice.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I
So,
mean,
sorry, go on.
no, I was going to say, so
I'll edit that out.
yeah, yeah, thank you. I was just going to say one last thing was that, so although I sort of missed being on Transformers, it's good to flex other muscles, and you always kind of know there'll be more Transformers round the corner.
Always. It never ends, Simon.
It never does. Yeah.
Apparently,
Yes.
no.
Yeah.
Right? Well, it
Some
has for
some
me, but
some very wise man once said that, I believe.
yeah. Setting it up for the future. Yeah.
So was anything else
Fantastic.
going on round then, other than your film and TV work?
Um,
Oh no, no, you have to edit that bit out as
pregnant
well.
pause. Hang on a minute. Just trying to make my head work again. Hang on a minute. No, I don't think so. I think I was very lucky. Well, okay. Yeah, there was a lot going on for me in TV, but as much as I say that, it's quite sporadic. So even a huge list of shows makes it sound as though I was like literally end to end working, storyboarding in TV. But some of those things were literally just 4 days work. Some of them more, some of them 3 weeks. But that you don't, as a storyboard artist, you don't on live action, you don't work on an awful lot because they'll only be requiring storyboards for certain kinds of scenes, so special effects, visual effects, stunts. It's usually that kind of thing. In TV, the budgets are always small, so as little as they can pay those sort of additional things like storyboarding, the better it is for them. Um, but I did some more animation. So when would that have been? So other than How to Chronicles, I worked on my own show then came to fruition. So Shane the Chef finally got picked up by Channel 5. So I was working on that a lot. I mean, solidly for, best part of a year. So that was a nice gig to be designing all of that. And then I did, some Horrid Henry and other animation stuff. And the beauty of working the downside of storyboarding in animation is that it kills you because there's so much drawing to do. Um, the pay's not as good, but the upside of it is a lot of constant work.
Mhm.
So working on one episode, you'll be boarding for something like 3 weeks or whatever,
Yeah.
So it's quite intensive, and I did enjoy all of that. I mean, storyboarding for live action was something that came quite naturally because in some ways it's just like drawing a comic, just drawing a sequence of essential panels. Storyboarding for animation is, hundreds of drawings. And it's a very different kind of discipline to live action boarding. So live action boarding, you will essentially you're framing things like you see them on TV. So that in that sense, it's very much like a comic book. Because I mean, people who draw comics, they're one of their main points of reference, other than other comic books, is film and TV. Just the way that it looks on film and TV. So you're kind of used to that. It's an easy transfer from drawing comics to storyboards, and the other way around as well. And a lot of people do it. Animation boarding, it's a huge discipline and people study it at, college and all that kind of thing. Well, I never went to film school. So there was a lot to learn about how to frame things, hookups from one cut to another, and scene changes and direction of travel, and all sorts of things. So you've got all of that to bear in mind as well while you're doing it, and then some kind of continuity. Software is used more now, which helps with continuity. But for a show like Horrid Henry, for example, which is a 2D show, so it's literally all hand drawn, just getting continuity from how the environment looks from cutting from one shot to another.
Hmm.
You need to do that because you're something they don't do very often these days that they used to do a lot was have what they called layout. So you'd have the storyboard artist drawing the storyboards, which can be fairly rough, but they do have to be on model, especially if it's a 2D show. You need the characters to look like the characters. It's not so essential on a CG show because you know that they're all going to be CG models anyway. So the characters are going to look the same because it's the same model they're using all the time. But when it's hand drawn, they need as much of that kind of set in the storyboards as possible. So you need to keep the characters consistent in size, proportions, and all those kind of things. And they used to have, which they still do sometimes, but they have a process called layout. So then a layout artist would take the essential shots of the storyboard and do a far more detailed drawing of that panel so that when the animators come to animate it, every now and then, like every time it cuts to a new shot, they would have something where somebody already had for them nailed it all down, nailed down the detail, exactly the size, exactly what the environment would look like. So there's a huge amount of work that goes into it,
Yeah.
which even, I mean, I knew a lot about animation. I did an animation module when I was at art college. Um, and I was, there was a show many, many years ago that people of our age will remember called the Do-It-Yourself Animation Show, which was by a guy called Bob Godfrey, who did Rhubarb and Custard and various 2D animated shows on TV. And he was an absolute master of the craft. Um, and so there was this TV show called the Do It Yourself Animation Show where he talked about all the disciplines of animating, but it was aimed at young people. So it was very easy to understand. And I used to watch that when I was younger. And I bought the book and all that kind of stuff. So I had quite a big understanding of
Mm.
it. But just, I mean,
Yeah.
there's so much to it. So I had to learn a lot very, very quickly. Um, but then as a result, I worked on some really nice
Yeah.
shows, and worked in all three disciplines in animation. So I worked in 2D, CG, and stop motion as
Mm.
well.
Yeah.
And they all have slightly different, different things that you need to be aware of and different concerns while you're drawing them, and certain limitations. I mean, we know from you and I know from when we were trying to develop Monster Maker as a TV show, and when we were having to look at how will we do this? Will we do it as 2D show or a CG show or whatever? One of the advantages of CG is you're essentially working with real characters. I mean, they're models in the computer, but they are real characters, so you can move the camera around, and well, you can't do that in 2D. So when you're storyboarding, it's like you've got to bear all of that in mind as well. Otherwise, you'll give the
Yeah.
animators a heart attack.
But with 3D CG, you can only have so many environments, can't you? Because they've all got to be built.
No,
Whereas,
budget limitations. Yeah,
yes,
yeah,
yeah, with 2D, you can just create a new background, a new environment. But yeah, I mean, I remember with Matt Hatter, it was like, well, we had our realms, and within those realms, the Sea of Sands or whatever, you had certain fixed locations. And
mm,
other than a certain amount of traveling past sand dunes and things, you
yeah,
had to, everything was based in that sort of pot of actual locations that had been built in
yeah,
computer.
yeah. We could do a whole episode about this, couldn't we?
Yeah, we could, and I think we should. We must both have some really good visual stuff we can share with the Patreon audience as well.
Yeah. Yeah, well, let's do an episode about all of that, about the animation industry, our experiences in it, and some of the techniques and equipment we use and all that kind of thing. That'd be kind of fun. I'm sure people would lap that up.
Yes, yeah, indeed. Yeah, there were just a few other things I thought I'd mentioned, sort of gleaned, as always, from my old WordPress blog. Hibernia Press, a small publishing company, were doing some of the first Scream reprints I'd ever seen. So we had 13th Floor, Library of Death, and Dracula File, and it featured some of my earliest work. Lovely to see that. And, quite a way before we got our lovely 40th anniversary edition. What else? Urban Species T-shirt company did a Simon Furman signature T-shirt, which was lovely. Wow, I'm on a T-shirt. I signed, the artwork was the cover of Transformers 32 featuring Grimlock, and I just did my signature across that. And yeah, just one of those nice little things. Death's Head got his Infinite Series action figure from Marvel, which was rather nice to see. And of course, now we have his lovely full-sized figure.
Yeah.
And generally there were conventions galore. All the usual suspects like Auto Assembly and LFCC, but Ireland and Birmingham and other sort of nice ones going on there.
Yeah, busy time.
Really busy time. And, I just wanted to do one last shout out for Chris McFeely, who does a great series called Transformers The Basics, where he takes a Transformers character and runs through their whole history over the however long they've been in the brand. And he recently did one on me, so I'm the first living, breathing subject of The Basics.
Was that as your alter ego bell ringer?
No. It was a extremely comprehensive, given it's 10 minutes or so, dive through my whole career in Transformers, but also mentioning a lot of the other things I've worked on. So yeah, generally well done, Chris, and thank you for that. And we'll put a link in the sort of episode notes. Yes.
Yeah. Perfect. Yeah.
Anything else you want to jump on with before we sign off?
No, we'll think of stuff and then we'll do it all next time. No, I can't think of anything else.
Yeah, and hopefully we'll soon have our next guest on as well. So we'll be talking about that in a bit.
Yeah, fabulous. Good.
Great. Well, thank you everyone for listening, viewing, and we will see you in a fortnight.
We will. Thanks everyone. See you soon. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to The Rest is Giant Robots. If you enjoyed what you heard, please consider subscribing for more and maybe share with like-minded friends. This has been a Wildfur production.